In higher ed, we're all looking for big wins, but reducing a 75% application abandonment rate and achieving a 90% conversion rate, that's next level transformation. Michael Battersworth, CMO at Texas State Technical College, shares how they achieved this by streamlining the application process with Element 451.
Our Element journey began out of a necessity. We were switching to a new SIS, and the application process was going to pose some real usability issues for us. We felt that application was going to hamper our enrollment. So we began quickly to evaluate different CRMs, different applications. So for context on that, our conversion rate with the prior application had about 75% abandonment of people clicking apply to submit. And the first weeks after going live with Element, we saw an 80% conversion, and that's now up to 90. So improving the usability of that application on the front end process has had a significant advance in our intake.
When technology works for students, it works for you. Visit element451.com to see how simplifying the application process with artificial intelligence will lead to significant results for your institution.
Welcome back, everyone, to another special live episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, recorded live here in Portland at the eduWeb Summit. And if folks forgot, this is my first time. I'm having a great time connecting with folks, and this is the third interview we're doing here, if you're following along as well. So we're getting some great content here and talking with Thomas from Halda, who is just one of the kind of more premier sponsors here. There's a lot of cool stuff that you're doing here. So we'll talk all about that, as well as just the work that you're doing, kind of what you're seeing and the work that you're doing with your partners. So Thomas, if you want to introduce yourself, your role, and just kind of give a quick sort of summary of what Halda does for folks who might not know.
I'm Thomas Steinman. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships for the Northeast here at Halda. Super excited to be here at eduWeb. It's my first time. Last year I was gonna make it down, but didn't end up making it on the flight. Super excited to be doing some cool work downstairs, actually. I don't know if you had the chance to check it out. But.
Yeah. And I think, I've heard of Halda a lot. I think you're making some big splashes and waves here in the higher ed space. So, one of the things you're doing here, I think, to kind of uplift a bit more of kind of what you all are bringing to the table. You're doing the AI studio is what's kind of downstairs. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, sort of, how that came to be and kind of what you're sort of offering folks to kind of engage with.
Yeah, I think it stems from the idea that a lot of people on the vendor side know a lot about AI. I think there might just be a standard, or I'm just thinking about it differently, but having a parent in admissions for a long time, I see admissions offices knowing or thinking about things as the way they've done it for 20 years and not necessarily accepting artificial intelligence as much as vendors do. They have to, right? Things move so fast. 1 year is 5 years in a vendor world or a startup world. So bringing that to a higher ed conference has been super cool to talk about how I use it, how schools could start using it tomorrow for next to nothing and make their processes a little bit easier has been really cool. I think even showing like VO3 and Midjourney and making images and making videos, not necessarily to get them onboarded to it tomorrow, but just to show them like, let's start spinning those gears a little bit, spinning those wheels.
Yeah, I think that is what's nice about this moment of, because I think there's like a lot of different use cases for AI. So like, I think some people might resonate with, with one more than another. And then like giving people like the opportunity to kind of play in the sandbox, get hands-on and sort of like demystify things. And if folks are following along, we did, our prior interview that we just did was also sort of speaking to that of like, how are you creating kind of these sort of learning opportunities and sort of embracing the opportunity to kind of, like demystify things and not have this feel so like abstract and ambiguous and intimidating and, all those sort of things. So I think, is just a great enabler of so many positive impacts, but I think people are sort of like maybe wary or just confused or whatever else. So I think, it's great that you all are sort of creating this sort of studio space to get hands-on with stuff.
Especially we have 5 people downstairs most of the day to show 5 different things they could be doing with AI tomorrow. And I think even to add on to it is like, it can be scary because there's so many different options for usage. Even if you look at ChatGPT, people see ChatGPT as one item. When it is in reality, I was scrolling through because I was doing API calls earlier today. There's maybe 40 options of different models that you could use. And each of them is good at a different thing. And even for myself, I'm like, okay, I'm a bit overwhelmed by this. But the reality is if you go to offices across the country, I'm sure you'll find more than one person who's just scared of AI in general. So bringing down the fear in a sense, but also lifting people's ability to go to the right area to start. And because that's where it starts, is just, hey, can you edit this paragraph for me? Hey, could you tone this up to be a little bit more casual? And then we can start working on prompt engineering and saying, well, that command or that prompt could be a little ambiguous. Let's put a percentage number on that prompt and say, how much more casual do you want that to be? How much more stern, or what's the tone that you're looking for to make it actually what you're looking for? Otherwise, some people who had come by the booth earlier today were saying, well, when I ask it to be casual, it just flips its script and just says, let's get as casual as it gets. And, it's an experience we all have to work through, just making sure that we're doing everything we can to educate people on taking the next step.
Yeah, and I think just, so much has happened so quickly with AI, but I think it is great to see that folks are trying to meet that sort of like velocity of change with also sort of like, education and sort of normalizing things and helping, because I just always saying like, start somewhere. That idea of, if you kind of like, kind of ingratiate something, like ChatGPT to somebody and they can see the value in it and then like just keep practicing to get better and then sort of start to be curious and maybe nurture their curiosity around these tools to be like, oh, I wonder if it could do this or I wonder if it could do that. And it's like, again, like the different use cases, it's like more often not now, like it could, it could, create you a visual, create you like, different like design things or whatever else. So, and I guess just with like kind of this event writ large, because certainly the AI studio is a big part of your presence here. But I don't know if like any sessions or, we had like the kind of the networking happy hour last night, just anything that's kind of noteworthy for you that's kind of stood out, like good conversations or common themes or anything, just kind of reflection so far as we're wrapping up, almost day 2 here.
Yeah, I think a common theme across having the AI studio, I guess, has been, how are schools using it today, and trying to understand how peers are using it. And without getting into what we're doing exactly, I think a lot of people are just excited to see how it can make their day-to-day lives a little easier, and more than it is to like enroll a student, right? Like enrolling a student's great, but at the same time, I think everybody across every industry is trying to make their jobs just a little bit easier every day. And that's been really cool coming from our seat, is like, well, Halda obviously has not their main prerogative of taking work off of somebody's plate, but, just making their day a little easier to make sure the students are getting the constant, attention that they're looking for and getting the value or interaction value they're looking for.
I think that is just a point well made of just sort of like, kind of holistically, you would hope that, an institution is kind of cultivating like, a culture of like, sort of like, how are you sort of approaching, the routine habits and kind of tasks that you have to do, like, and sort of seeing AI as a partner, as a sidekick, as a, an augment and a supplement or whatever. Like if we're creating a culture where people are open-minded and curious enough or, just sort of have like the, the skill set and the ability to like, give good prompts or get, whatever else. Like, I think it is just sort of, but the whole idea of starting somewhere could be that idea of like, oh, I got to do this sort of like routine thing all the time, whatever. And like you kind of start there and that can be where the seeds get planted to just be like, oh, actually, yeah, I can now see a use case where it may be much more like, helping us to enroll, more better students, that are more interested or qualified or whatever, like just good quality leads of, students that are going to, follow through and start and persist and graduate and whatever. Like, you can start to get like very big picture there, but even if it's just kind of starting small with kind of your kind of, internal processes, your staff, how they collaborate and whatever else, it's like, cool, great. Yeah. Like that's great to kind of start there. Or you could be starting very like strategically with these like, mission critical kind of things, but it's like, sure, do that or do the other thing and just start to build that culture, for yourself, with your routines, and hopefully, leaders are doing the same for all of their, folks that they're overseeing and stuff. So
yeah, you want your admissions counselors or anybody on your admissions team to spend the bulk of their time doing the most valuable things. And I think sometimes, and this is something that AI is really built to help, is repeatable menial tasks. Or a bulk of the manual effort can be automated where you still have that control you're looking for. And it can give your admissions counselors time back to work with the students who are struggling to get their registration forms done or struggling to get their I-20 approved or their visa approved. and work with students who are either really far down funnel or really far up funnel, which makes an effect on enrollment without having to do these giant, projects. I think it's all in those intangibles you don't think about as much, but they can make a massive effect on enrollment.
Yeah. So I think, the core kind of the conversation that I want to have with you is on sort of like, the engine that would be, driving those things that you're sort of mentioning is better data integration. Like I think, nowadays any institution is going to have a lot of data points, maybe, just very disparately kind of disconnected across their institution and everything. So, you know, how do you see stronger data integration empowering, higher ed marketing and enrollment efforts?
It's really important to remember how much data we have about a student, how much data we collect in every silo we have. Whether that's the website, whether that's our SIS, whether that's our CRM, whether that's our form submission company, or the data we buy through our ad partners or agencies. All of that data is incredibly valuable on its own, but imagine if it was all put together. Um, and I think it comes down to, we've always been an industry that falls behind, looking at other companies, other industries, and how they're using it. The expectation is individualization or customization, and not necessarily just insert first name anymore. And we have to be more aware of that as like, we have all this data. How can I bring it all together to make sure that every student gets extreme hyper personalized value out of their interactions with us? It's the expectation. Like ASU is going to do it. University of the People, Southern New Hampshire is going to do it because they think like a business more than most of us do. How can we, as a small private institution or a mid-sized public, start doing similar things to make sure every student feels like they're heard, valued, and appreciated during the enrollment process? Because that is going to result in an enrolled student more often than not. So, ultimately, that's the goal that I want for every school, regardless of whether or not they partner with us.
Yeah. Well, and I think it is, I mean, sort of thinking again, sort of like cultural or sort of mindset shifts or whatever, kind of like recognizing kind of the new paradigm where like, yeah, we're going to have a lot of these data points and like not thinking that they even could be connected or whatever, or like, if they could, it'd have to be like super manual or something. But yeah, that is something that I just really appreciate is that like, yeah, like there's going to be no shortage of data points, but also like we're going to have all those different tools and things that you mentioned. So it's just like, I think that is going to be as important as like, okay, what's the new cool shiny thing that we have to like buy or, do whatever else. Like it could be like, okay, wherever you are right now, like how are you optimizing the potential of, your entire tech stack? How is it integrating together? Either like, kind of from point A to point B, or something where it sounds like, Halda could be this sort of like, catalyst that enters the system and then sort of like brings it all together as sort of like a, a nexus or a hub or whatever. But like, yeah, I think it's just an important mindset that like, I mean, each team could certainly have, of the tools that they use, but then even just sort of like writ large for the institution, just knowing like, okay, we've got all these different tools in our tech stack. We need to make sure that we are, keeping everything kind of flowing back and forth, and also sort of, pulling it all together, at that singular sort of student level and things like that. So, and just, yeah, like the idea that like other industries and things like, there's a treaded path, and is kind of the higher ed story. I think that, we will follow the paths that have been treaded before us. And so there can be, role models or sort of like others to kind of take inspiration from and then sort of adapt and sort of contour to, higher ed. But so I guess, do you feel like that is sort of like conversations that you're having? Is that like people are sort of at that mindset, I guess, of sort of like understanding like, yeah, we've got all these kind of disparate things, and like I guess I'm trying to glean, I guess, sort of how folks are sort of speaking to sort of like the problems that they have or whatever else. Because it may be, to me, I'm imagining that some people like I said, it's like they wanted me to think that these things could kind of be interconnected. So like,
Yeah.
How does sort of like you kind of ingratiate people to sort of this idea of, that kind of stronger data integration?
I think it is difficult. I think a lot of people don't know that two things could speak to one another in a kind way enough to the point where we can create something super personal. It is possible. Showing them is definitely better than telling. showing how a AI generated, truly individualized email could happen in less than a minute from when a student enters your website and fills out a form. It could be sent to them. We could send it to them in 30 seconds. And the reality is that's not going to be the best for engagement metrics, but it's possible. And I think that is, to some people, crazy. So you have to, for some, it just comes naturally. It's like, oh, of course, like that is what I assume Amazon's doing. That's what I assume they're doing. That's what I assume these other larger vendors from the B2B side are doing as well. But I didn't know that was possible for higher ed with my, 40,000 names I purchased. Like, it is. So the general sentiment is definitely, sometimes skittish in higher ed, and that's normal. But it's our job, it's my job to make sure that people are just at the very least, aware that there's a possibility there for something greater than just, mail merging.
Right. Yeah.
Mail merge, I remember in 2017 was like my entire job. Put 100 names into this mail merge and hopefully they set a meeting with you.
Yeah. So I guess that is just, again, like I feel like that's been kind of an undercurrent now. It's just even some of these episodes is that that sort of like demystification, the sort of like education, the sort of like engagement around seeing AI's potential, seeing it firsthand, like that idea of like, it's going to be one of those things where it's like, I'd rather show you than tell you. And then like, that you all are sort of incubating these sort of, this AI studio space to kind of have these interactions and abilities for people to kind of interface and do all that. So it's really great. And I think I'll give you kind of the final word here. If you want to just sort of give any sort of advice from your sort of vantage point, your interactions, reflections on this event, just advice for other higher ed leaders right now navigating in this moment.
We're in higher education. We are educators ourselves, a lot of us. Don't be afraid of learning more about something that scares you. Not that I think anybody individually is. It's just something that is going to be around for a while. I don't know if we'll be the only player forever in the space. I'm certain we won't be. So go out and learn as much as you can about all these different vendors as you're planning for this next year. And truly, truly, truly think about your data and how it can influence more personal connections with your prospective students. As somebody who's, grew up in an admissions office and is now working in the vendor side, I know how powerful it is when you have a one-on-one tour, a one-on-one interview. How can we bring more of that into the higher funnel? That's what's going to make the biggest difference on getting people to matriculate into a yielded student. That's ultimately my goal or the prerogative I would push out to higher ed leaders.
Yeah, I think that's a great sentiment. That sort of like openness to learning and kind of being willing to kind of push through that discomfort and those sort of things. I think is a great final thought here. And just appreciate you and Halda for kind of creating these learning opportunities and spaces for folks here with ways to connect with you and Halda and the show notes. And just really appreciate you taking out the time.
Thank you, Dustin. Appreciate it.